The 1-3-2-1 formula for effective Toastmasters speech evaluation. This model is great for speech evaluation contests as well as for your everyday evaluation of project speeches at your club meeting. So before I dive into the actual model, I want to show you a couple of videos of world champion speech evaluators using this model and see whether you can decipher the framework and the structure of this model. We'll start off with the 2014 speech evaluation champion, Team Shield.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Anthony, I enjoyed your speech. I had fun this morning, and it looked like you were having fun as well. You did a number of things really well. I'm going to highlight 3 that stood out for me. First, you really drew me in with your story. You started with an everyday encounter, but it became a fantasy type of story. And you just drew me in your expressiveness and your joy up here. And I thought that was really helpful to start the morning. You had something that we could connect with. I also thought that you were very memorable. You constructed a story that had many points that you kept coming back to. Players that we knew. Features of the area that we knew, the redwoods that are orange, sequoias that are black. You tied the colors of the team in there as well. And then you also tied the features of this area all the way into the history of the gold rush and the balls that became gold nuggets that we found later. And you were very clever. You had this device where you'd slip up and you'd say, oh, no, I mean the World Series. No, I mean the Pangea Series. And that kept me interested, but it's made it more memorable. I keep thinking, well, which was fantasy and which was real? You wove that together really well. And then finally, your delivery, very impressive. You came up here and started gesturing with your hands. I knew where you were. The gentleman behind you, Frank, I saw you batting. It drew me in as part of your storytelling. There are a couple of things that I would suggest that I think might be helpful. And one would be, it seemed that you had so much material, there was so much that was memorable, that you were moving at a pretty, not rapid, but a pretty determined clip. And so you're a great storyteller, and I think a storyteller has the opportunity to pause a little bit, to let us take this in. Oh, those are the players. And to pause a little bit. Oh, those are the features of the area. To pause a little bit, and maybe even use the stage in that manner. You had enthusiasm and were animated. That's a very powerful way to present, and so I like that. But as a storyteller, I just like someone who is moving along and is building the drama and pausing to let me catch up, and then I'm wondering what's going to happen next. I think the other thing that would be fun for me to see is for you to reintroduce Frank at the end. You ended the story, that's how this all works. It would have been great to have you say, and I turned and thanked Frank for this great story. There was a gleam in his eye, and I got distracted for a minute, and by the time I turned around again, Frank was gone. Almost like the ghost of San Francisco, or maybe the fog. And if you introduced him with some distinctive characteristics, you could then leave and say, so someday you may see him in San Francisco. So in summary, I would say a memorable speech, a great storytelling delivery, a couple of tips to help you improve, but I look forward to hearing you speak again. Madam Toastmaster.
Did you manage to observe what model and framework that he used? Well, let's take a look at the second champion speech evaluator from 2015, and her name is Trishma Pinto.
Today, Rashmi took us on an emotional journey, anchored to a very relevant message. So let's see how she fared on the platform. Contest chair, Toastmasters, and my dear Rashmi. What I loved up first in your speech was the use of a story to convey a very relevant message. Stories are the emotional glue that connect an audience with your idea. And by using a theme that is so universal, that of mother and son relationship, I think you really chose a powerful vehicle in which to convey your thoughts. Apart from that, I really enjoyed that while there was a lot of despair of the mother and death of the son, you also had the presence of mind kindness to give us a different variety in your speech when you said that the Son from heaven said, I saw Jesus and he looks nothing like his pictures. So I appreciate a little lightheartedness in between all of that emotion. The second thing I enjoyed about your speech, Rashmi, is the fact that you seemed so comfortable with your body language on stage. You knew exactly where each character stood. The mother stood here, the doctor stood there, and you used your hands when you had to make a point. And so it felt very fluid, very natural, and very, very appropriate to the thoughts that you were putting across. The third thing I enjoyed very much, and it's part of my favorite thing, is your use of vocabulary. You had a very rich rhetorical device used, especially when you had repetition. Nobody can talk like you, nobody can walk like you, nobody can smile like you. You had trials, people, friends, family. You also used descriptive words such as the mother ran her head through the red and curly hair of the son. So I could really see that. But how can we take this speech, Rashmi, which is very satisfactory, and turn it into something spectacular? Well, I have two suggestions for you. The first thing is the use of voice, which I felt, having such a melodious voice, could have been used to a greater extreme. There was a mother who was suffering over the death of her son, and you could have used it saying, why me, God, why me? Or when the doctor was giving a bad news, you could have used your voice. I'm sorry, he is dead. So the highs and lows, the speeding and the slowing down all add to the emotion. The second thing I'd like to suggest to you, Rashmi, is a use of practiced spontaneity. Now let me explain that, because I felt that the speech was so well practiced, it almost felt mechanical and clinical. You know exactly where to stand, you know exactly what to say, but I would love to see humanness. I would love to see you be fully in the character, the mother, the doctor, the son. Be in that character, let everybody see the human side, let everybody feel the expressions, let everybody see what the story really meant and felt. Finally, to wrap it up, Rashmi, I loved your powerful use of the stage, your body language, your story, and your words. If you could just polish your voice as well as practiced spontaneity, you're on your way to becoming a unique force to be reckoned with. All the best.
So by now, you might have a clue as to what kind of formula structure that these champion evaluators use. So why don't we just dive into this 1, 3, 2, 1 formula? Well, the numbers here represent a particular segment of your speech evaluation. So the first one would be what we call the opening statement. And there's only one opening statement. It shouldn't take more than 15 to 20 seconds. And it should cover the following sub-points. Of course, your greetings, your salutations, greeting of the contest chair, fellow Toastmasters, and don't forget to address the test speaker. Next, try to use clever, startling, memorable openers to grab attention. Remember, at a divisional or district level, you'll be competing with 8 to 10 other contestants. Don't try to sound the same. Always stand out. And if you can, state the speech purpose and objectives. You see, every speech will have a particular intention. So when you state the objectives, you're actually informing the judges that you know exactly what you are evaluating. For example, a test speaker could be speaking to entertain, or it could be a technical presentation, or it could be a visionary leadership speech. Whatever it is, make it clear from the start that you know the objectives of the speech. Next segment would be 3 commendations and 2 recommendations. So they make up the second and the third segment. I will comment on them later on after I conclude the last segment, which is 1 closing summary. And that should also take about 15 to 20 seconds, quite similar to your opening statement. What do you include in the last portion? Well, obviously, you need to summarize your points and make it very succinct, very clear. If you use 3 combinations, state them in point form. 2 recommendations, also state them. And then tie back to your opening statement if there is any or if it's suitable. And of course, all evaluations are meant to elevate the speaker. So make it uplifting, motivational, and encouraging for your speaker. Now that we know the 1-3-2-1 formula, let's look at another video of this champion speech evaluator, Ranjit Venkatesh.
Contestant number 9, Rajit Venkatesh.
Contest chair, early rising Toastmasters, guests, and Pascal. All aboard. I felt that the captain of the Titanic was calling us to come on board. 3 things I loved about your speech. You were like a Hollywood director on stage, taking us from a real railway station to a model railway station and back to reality. You are a craftsman with words. I love the chug of the trains, and I like the snap of the pliers, dismantling your grandfather's creation. And what I really liked was this emotional roller coaster that you took us on. Now, I was sitting on the edge of my seat for a big part of the speech. Now, let us see what you can do to take this speech from good to great. For a speaker of your caliber, when the contest chair leaves, please try and wait till she sits down. This is your stage, and wait for the contest chair to sit down and the audience to know that you run the show. Secondly, the title, All Aboard, I thought was beautifully used in the beginning. And I was waiting for you to come and tell us in the end, all aboard. You know, with that amount of high emotion, if you had said all aboard, I would have gone anywhere with you. Let's talk about the third point, the emotional roller coaster that you took us on. Now, with this amount of high emotions, I would love a pause, especially when you talk about us. What about your passionate projects? Give us a pause. Let us think about what is important to us. And then go back to your highly emotional speech. And the fourth point, the message of the speech. I thought it was great the way you put it together, but try and bring it closer in a way that we can feel it. Your personal account with your grandfather and how we could make it personal for us. Now let's put it all together. What did I really like? You're a director of ideas. You're a master with words. And you took us on an emotional roller coaster ride. What you could improve is wait for the contest chair to sit down and use your title in a nice way and bring in a pause in your emotions. And what can I say? Somewhere down the lane, I want to say, and we want to say, all aboard.
I'm sure by now it must be really clear how each one of these champion evaluators use the 1-3-2-1 formula. So I want to now pay attention to these 3 commendations and 2 recommendations that I talked about earlier, which makes up 70% of the judging criteria as well as the time needed to accomplish it. Let's talk about the commendations first. For each one of the commendations that you give, you need to first specify the evidence. Don't just point them out and say, good job, well done, it was excellent, it was fantastic. Don't use such platitudes. Zoom in and complement it by saying things like, it was a clever use of an acronym. You see how technical you can get and how specific? Very good use of imagery. Name it. Name the device. Name the strategy that the speaker used. You built tonal intensity very effectively just before your punchline. When you specify it so specifically, judges will know that you paid attention and you have good analysis of the test speaker's speech. Or the last point, right before your second point, you use body language to enhance. So this is what we mean by zooming into the evidence. Next, you got to describe the effect of those points. In other words, emphasize on the impact it made on the audience and of you as the evaluator. You could say things like, because of that, I was able to follow your story. It helped me to understand the background. I could imagine how it looked like when you said that. It made us feel what you felt. You made us all laugh or put us in suspense, or you kept us riveted. All this describes the impact that the speaker using the particular tool made on you. Next, we want to talk about recommendations. Remember, 2 recommendations. I think that's about all the time you have to give. And so under recommendations, you should also specify both the evidence and the effect. For example, it appeared as if you were unsure and, I felt a little lost towards the end. You see, both the evidence and the effect. It sounded like you didn't quite believe in what you were saying, and that made me feel quite puzzled. I thought it was a bit rushed and abrupt, and I found myself trying to catch up. You see, when giving areas of improvement recommendations, you have to describe it really specifically and the impact before going into solutions or suggestions. You have to give clear examples of how you can use or suggestions of alternative variations that you're going to give to the test speaker to replace some of those areas of improvement. And I want you to take note of the language. If I could suggest to you to use this, it might have been more effective to approach it from this angle. I thought you could have done it really well if you utilize this. A technique that you may find useful is the use of this. If you could consider cutting back on, etc., how about trying this in future? And notice the language. I wonder if you can do it. Perhaps, maybe. These are all what we call the use of tentative language. Tentative language, meaning you don't want to sound too curt, too harsh, and overly critical. So tentative language helps to soften the receptivity of your test speaker. This shows that you are a sensitive evaluator and also you have high EQ. So once again, the 1-3-2-1 formula really emphasizes on the 2 portions of 3 commendations and 2 recommendations, which accounts for 70%. And that itself alone should not take more than 2.5-3 minutes. Remember, you still have the opening statement and the closing summary. And before the bell rings or your time is up, where you'll be disqualified at 3:30 minutes, make sure to pay attention to your timing. So all in all, this is the 1-3-2-1 formula for effective Toastmasters speech evaluation. I wish you all the best as you prepare and practice using this formula.